And we are back on the M&P Conservative Media Network with Patrick Wood, author of the book Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. And we just wrapped up talking about the Pope and the encyclical, and the fact that the encyclical is 180 degrees opposite of actually what Patrick describes in his book about technocracy. And I'm gonna go onto his website, technocracyrising.com. He says there's a link there to the PDF. I'm gonna get that down. It'll be put onto the YouTube channel and on the Meat Potatoes Facebook page, and everyone can see it. I can't wait to read that. It's gonna be very interesting. I didn't know. I didn't know that it was available. Trust Patrick to go ahead and find it. Thank you for that, Patrick. So here in Massachusetts, let's move into Agenda 21. We're vying for the Olympics in 2024, I think it is. And a lot of opposition going on here in the state of Massachusetts. But instantaneously, in fact, the very man that I bought your book off of, a friend of ours who works in the Boston Tea Party, basically bought a case of your books. He went to Amazon.com, ordered a whole case of them. And then, of course, he, was passing them out and, giving them to various people at the various meetings. That's how I got your book. And so he also got, and we were at another Tea Party meeting about a month or so ago. He shows up. He's got a pamphlet, one of those government document type pamphlet things that they all print. It's this, welcome Olympics 2024 to Massachusetts, yada yada. Everything in there is directly Agenda 21 driven. They're talking about setting up areas where people will not be allowed to drive into the city. Parking will be set up outside the city. The state is going to spend millions, if not billions of dollars in expanded commuter rail. Okay, I'm with that. We should have better commuter rail, but it's all being driven by this Agenda 21. I got to get a hold of the pamphlet. I'm going to meet up with the guy at our next meeting and get that pamphlet, and I'll have you back on. I'll have more of the facts to give you. But they're going to close down the highways. Cabs won't even be allowed to run. Everything's going to be mass transit, buses, trains, and then when you get into the city, they're going to actually spend money building almost like rail trails, but they're walking trails right alongside the Mass Pike and in through the city to get to these various venues. They're going to have all those bicycles that you see now in the city. You pop in a quarter or whatever it is, your credit card, and you get to have a bicycle.
Yeah.
Agenda 21, sir. Go ahead.
It's incredible. Let me put it this way. Agenda 21 and sustainable development are economic terms. They're based on business, on the economy. The word development it's not a political term, it's an economic term. And the way sustainable development has been implemented in America, right down to every community, the lowest level of every community is steeped in this stuff.
Right.
In every case, they say, well, it was voluntary. Nobody crammed it down your throat. It was voluntary. Nobody had to do it. And that pretty much defuses any attacks, that they have. But here's the thing. In every case, the reason that Agenda 21 or Sustainable Development things came to the local community is because there was a money carrot held out.
Yeah.
That said, if you will do this, we will give you this money. And so they said, gee, we want money. How bad could it be? So they said, sure, we'll do it. Give us the money. I've seen this. I've documented this 1,000 times across our country. This is the MO of bringing sustainable development into America and cramming it down the cities, counties, and the state's throat. And so let me tell you what's happening in the case when you have a public venue, like what you're talking about here, coming to a major city. You didn't win that contract just based on your good looks and your, whatever kind of,
there's all sorts of wheeling and dealing going on, yeah.
You got that gig, if you will, because you agreed to accept it on the terms of sustainable development. And the actual showing up in the city to have it happen there is the carrot. Mm-hmm. That's the money. See, they said, we'll deliver the money to you if you agree to do it this way.
Right.
And so there will be countless millions of people that are further indoctrinated on Agenda 21 when they come to the events.
Sure. Yeah.
They will be living it. They will be experiencing it. They'll go back to their own countries and say, this was so wonderful. We have to do the same thing in our country. And it's a public relations stunt. But they didn't pick your city just because it was a good-looking city. There was an ulterior motive, and it was used as a carrot to bring in the policies for public display of sustainable development and Agenda 21.
Exactly.
In my opinion, period, end of subject.
There, I was speaking to Russell Taub. He's running for Congress down in Rhode Island, and I had talked a little bit about this, and he had said to me that, I said, so where's it going to be? I mean, the Olympics, I mean, if anybody's ever been to Boston, Boston is a postage stamp of the city. I mean, population-wise, okay, but it's a postage stamp geographically.
Yes.
And I said, where are they going to put these venues? So Russ turns to me and he says, oh no, there's this guy who owns a huge empty lot down in Quincy, just a few miles down the road. And I was like, well, wait a minute, an empty lot? He says, yeah, he uses it for parking trucks and rigs, and rigs that come in and out of state, they need a rest stop. He charges them a fee. He's also got storage containers there. Various businesses need a way station to pop stuff. He has this empty lot. I said, so what, is he selling? He says, oh no, the city's going to pull it by eminent domain. I was like, oh, so here we go with that. Again, Agenda 21. Never mind, it's like, well, do we have an empty space? Well, is there a space that we could do that? Yeah, there's an empty field over here. We could probably build a convention center. Well, there's space over here, and there's all these old buildings that we've been looking to tear down. We can't get anybody to buy them or use them. This would be a great spot. No, that thought never entered anybody's head. No, we're just going to take this guy's land.
If your listeners aren't aware of it, the idea, the whole concept of public-private partnerships has its roots in Agenda 21, and which, of course, brings us sustainable development and all the other things that go with it. But land use policies are a big part of Agenda 21, and using eminent domain by a city, by some kind of a legal entity, using eminent domain to grab what do you call it, normal citizens' land for larger developments where you have this public-private partnership going on where another company, a third company comes in, partners with the city in kind of a quasi-fascist manner to go and develop that property that they grab via eminent domain. This is a public-private partnership. It's happening all over America today. That's nothing new.
And it's
people never recognize it, is that's what it is. That's where it's from. That's what's going on. It's a scam. It's an outright scam on the people who own the property.
And there are actual destructions of communities going on. Another good friend of mine coming on to the show later on this month, who works in the Rhode Island Tea Party, is he's heading up. He's working on an advocacy, public education idea called Roadmap Rhode Island. And again, it gets back to Agenda 21. And the YouTube piece is on the Meat and Potatoes Facebook page. I'm going to pull that back up and put it up on the top as we get closer and closer to that interview. Essentially, if you watch the video, is that Agenda 21 driving the whole thing. City councils, town councils, even the state government of Rhode Island is enacting this policy where older communities, maybe poor communities, communities that have a lot of basically unused space, again, economically downtrodden communities, lots of empty buildings, lots of just economic disaster areas. They're going to go in and they're going to confiscate all this land, tear down all the buildings, and re-green the area. It's already happened. It's happened up in New York. If you watch the video, there's a place in New York they already tore down an entire community, an entire town, vanished, gone, so that they could plant grass and trees and everything else, and it's happening in Rhode Island. This is more of that, and I don't know if these people are getting justly compensated. Isn't that part of what eminent domain is you're supposed to, okay, eminent domain, you can take property, but it's got to be for a national use. You got to put in a highway. We got to, I don't know, we might have to build an army base or something. Some sort of national security, some sort of thing that is directly going to benefit the nation as a whole, and then that person is compensated for their land. That's not going to happen here, is it, Patrick?
Well, even if they do receive a compensation, say fair value, that's not really the rub in this. The rub is that the person who owns the property is simply displaced. He's simply booted off the property. Whatever amount of money he gets, in some cases they get maybe even more than what the property's worth. But the idea that one public entity can come in and just tell you to get the heck off your land, that almost reminds you of what happened, what the kind of stuff that happened back in the middle 1800s. When a bully rancher would come in and drive the sheep people off a piece of land so they could use it for cattle.
Certainly, right.
He'd go out and start shooting at them until we better get out of here.
That's right. And
back then, same thing. It's the same policy altogether.
And this translates, again, I know it's old news now, the Bundy Ranch. There's a perfect example. There's another ranch, and you had mentioned down in Arizona where you had some land that was going on. Address that one more time. Refresh my audience on that.
Oh boy, that's a complicated topic, but there was a sleepy little river down in southern Arizona that originated in Mexico. And it flowed into Arizona, and most of the river was underground. It wasn't an exciting place at all, but it was an international river. And after the North American Free Trade Agreement got passed in 1992, thanks to George Bush and Bill Clinton, both members of the Trilateral Commission,
yes.
I might add. Yep. The Center for Biological Diversity in Tucson, Arizona, filed a lawsuit under that treaty, stating that the American side of the river was not upholding its obligations according to international law, and that started a domino process. And before the thing was done, all the ranchers in that area, it was just small little areas. We're not talking about half a state. It was just like, a river is maybe 20, 25, 30 miles long, and there was maybe a half a mile on either side of the river of arable agricultural land. Every single farmer in that region got displaced. Every single one got bounced out because of this bogus kangaroo court process that just literally just ran these farmers and ranchers out of the whole area.
And what's that area like now? I mean,
it's sick. I was down there, and when I went down to see it, the reason I went there after college, it was such a beautiful area. I just fell in love with it. And I went down this time, just recently, with my wife. We spent a couple of days down there snooping around and looking at stuff. It made me want to cry. It just made me want to cry. The whole area is so pathetic. The Bureau of Land Management has ended up with ownership on virtually all the land right along the river itself. They've turned it back to weeds, essentially. Nothing can be grown on it. It's completely isolated. You can't walk it because the weeds are too thick, including the thistles and the stickers. And the land will never be used again. As long as BLM has a hold of it, the land will never produce another useful thing as long as anybody's on, even in the area. And it's just, some of the land has been turned into things like bird sanctuaries and, other cockeyed stuff that has no economic value whatsoever. And, my reaction every time I go down there and look at it just brings tears to my eyes.
I can't blame you. The reason why I asked you that question is and when I read it in your book, and we talked about it on our first interview, again, San Joaquin Valley, the water shut off. The same thing has happened down there. You look at that area. Again, it used to be, it was the jewel of California. Talk about farms as far as the eye can see, green, producing, water, jobs, people, families, economy.
Right.
Talk about use of the land. It says in the Bible we're supposed to be good stewards of the earth. Well, this is what being a good steward is. You don't take a piece of land and you destroy it. You take a piece of land and you make it produce. You bring water. You grow things. You bring families. You bring businesses in. You turn the area into a viable community.
Right.
And I got news for you, folks. This is actually a far sounder environmental policy than what BLM is doing now. Patrick just said the area that he went to in Arizona, it's a wasteland now. You go to San Joaquin Valley, it's the same thing. It's tumbleweeds, it's desert. Dust bowls, dust clouds, just in the neighboring communities that are still there. constantly have dust storms going on. Whereas before it was farms, it was green, it was jobs, there was life down there. But this is what these things do. You had said it before in the interview. You know, they come on with these sweet packages, the carrot and the stick. They had dangled the money. Everybody thinks that it's going to be a wonderful idea. Now let's fast forward 2 or 3 years later. It's not, is it? It's not. It's not what it's cracked up to be.
Right. The whole idea of Agenda 21 and sustainable development is to sequester all of the resources, or as many of the resources of the world as they can. Traditionally, wealth has always been measured in what is in the land, the potential for producing something in the land. If you're a billionaire and you got $1 billion in the bank, you're not rich. You could lose your money tomorrow just as fast as you made it, 2 weeks ago. So cash itself is not a measure of wealth. What you own in the land is where the wealth is. It's where all the resources are: the timber, the gold, the oil, the natural gas, all the metals, the farming, agriculture, things you produce on the land. This is where real wealth lies. The global elite knows this, Chris. They've known this forever. That's why John D. Rockefeller was in oil, and they were in railroads,
Sure.
And they were in stuff that had to do with the land back in the early 1900s. They understood wealth was in the land. Sustainable development and Agenda 21 is all about tying up the natural resources of the world into a global trust, if you will, held for the quote-unquote global common good. And the only people that will have access to these resources are the cronies or the people who are at the top who choose to go in and mine something or drill some wells or cut some timber or whatever. But you and I will have no access to these resources whatsoever. And this is exactly what's been going on all over the world, not just here with BLM and with the Forest and Park Service. It's been going on all over the world,
Right.
where the global elite are gobbling up millions and millions of acres of prime resources, making them off limits to people like you and I that might start a small business and want to go out and make something or mine something or build something on the land. And that will deny us the ability to come in and have an economic activity. But the people that are doing if you will, the public-private partnerships at the top of the food chain, they're going to get away with murder. They're going to, literally, in some cases, they're going to get away with murder in the economic food chain because they're the only ones that are going to be able to make any money on this stuff.
And what a great term to use, the economic food chain. Let's talk about a group of people here that are probably at the bottom of the barrel of the economic food chain currently. We're talking about Greece. This is, they're supposed to, I don't know, somehow either get a bailout. I know that they had the referendum. Overwhelmingly, the people said no. We don't want to pay any more money, or we don't want to, whatever the deal is that they're trying to do. I'm basically going to segue to you, because it sounds like you have a little more education on this than I do. But I'm watching on the news, I mean, people's life savings are wiped out, their whole livelihoods are wiped out, there's no jobs, there's no money. I mean, it's coming to a city near you soon, isn't it?
It is, and I think unless you have a framework perspective, like from Technocracy Rising, you cannot appreciate what's going on in Greece, truly. In fact, it's probably just going to be confusing to most people altogether. But let me tell you what the head of climate change at the United Nations said on February 3rd of this year at a press conference in Europe. It was not reported here. We got the press release from Europe. It was translated for us. Actually, she spoke in English at the time. It was easy to get it in her own tongue and simply write down what she said. This is the head of climate change at the United Nations. She's a bigwig. Her name is Christiana Figueres. She said, and I quote, "This is the first time in the history of mankind that we're setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution," close quote. This woman has declared that capitalism and free enterprise are about to be murdered. There's no other kind way to say it. She's talking about replacing capitalism and free enterprise with the United Nations utopian view, just technocracy, but the utopian view of what they call a green economy. Never been tried in the history of the world, and yet they say it's going to solve all of mankind's problems. We're going to have jobs for everyone, education, we're going to be free of disease, we're going to be free of poverty, and it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful place to live. And this is just, I mean, it's just one lie after another, basically. They can't possibly produce these things any more than the man in the moon could.
Exactly.
But capitalism is on the chopping block right now, and the global elite, I'm going to just be very bold about this, the global elite have a huge moral hazard in dealing with Greece right now. Greece was already over the edge for a long time. They got problems. Their society is based on socialism, you know, communism. They've done.
Yeah, they're a welfare country.
But that's beside the point. We need to get past that and realize what's going on here. Why are they choosing to crush this people in Greece? It's a little country. It's not really very significant, other than it's the cradle of Western civilization, I might add. But you know, that aside, it's not a big country. Isn't really important in a lot of ways to Europe. Yet they're choosing to crush this little country. And if the moral hazard is being executed here, where they figure, okay, it's time for capitalism to die. If this is the defined period of time that Christiana Figueres is talking about, then Greece may well be the hole in the dike, if you will,
right,
that's going to break the entire dam apart and destroy capitalism in a relatively short period of time. If that happens, the United Nations obviously stands ready to bring sustainable development and Agenda 21 out to the full force of the world, to completely blanket the world for their resource-based economy, which is modeled after 1930s technocracy that I detailed in my book, Technocracy Rising. There's a risk here, Chris. That's all I'm saying. Is I'm not predicting the future. I don't have a crystal ball. But there is a huge risk here when somebody like Christiana Figueres says that they're going to do away with capitalism, and they're going to replace it with something else that they've already defined elsewhere very clearly as their green economy. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, Greece gets stomped into oblivion in Europe. Some people there have said Europe is committing suicide, and they don't know why. I can tell them why. If this is the case, right, they're getting ready to finally push Humpty Dumpty off the wall, break into smithereens on the rocks below, so that they can get people to buy into the fact that capitalism is dead, just like it appeared to be during the Great Depression in 1932, when technocracy really got rolling in America. And if people believe that capitalism is dead, they will be ready to accept anything that the UN or anybody else proposes to them. This is a huge risk.
Because they'll be desperate. They'll be desperate, and they'll accept anything. They'll end up being the first casualty. So it doesn't matter that, I think it was like over 80% of the people that voted in Greece on the referendum, they voted against it. Their vote doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that they said no.
It doesn't really matter.
Maybe that was it was probably just a test. Well, let's give them a referendum. Let's give them the illusion of choice. And then whatever they vote, that'll give us, the technocrats, the UN, that'll give us some sort of, insight to, okay, well, all these people are against it, so maybe we'll do Agenda 21 and we'll back it up with an international military force to push our agenda. Because I got news for you. I think that's what'll happen. You're going to have not only riots, never mind the riots. In order to do this, you're going to need armed support to force this down people's throats.
Yeah, it may well come to that in Greece soon. But what's interesting to note, just on kind of a macroeconomic level, is that the entire debt of the world, which is, oh my gosh, is way into the trillions and trillions of dollars, the accumulated debt of countries,
every
and
country,
individuals,
right,
and so on. And when you look at the whole debt structure, you know it's going to come unglued one of these days. It's going to have to be reset down to zero. But you see, the bankers and so on, they don't want to go bankrupt. They want their money back. The people that loaned the money to Greece and elsewhere, they want their money back. And they're going to get it back. And so they've colluded with the government to simply go in and start raiding the bank accounts of consumers. In other words, the citizens of the country.
That's right. That's right.
They're going in and they're going to simply abscond with the savings accounts that these people have spent a lifetime building up. And nobody in the world is squawking. America's not squawking. The banks that are doing this in Greece are the same banks that operate here. And if we have any pipe dream or daydream that these people aren't going to do the same thing to us one day if they get an opportunity, is just insanity. They will do it to us just as easily as they're doing it to these people. And if you add up all of the savings in the world and compare it to the size of the debt in the world, guess what? It's roughly the same. So if all the debt in the world was to be given up by countries, by municipalities, or whatever,
Right.
don't think that the banks and the people that loan them the money aren't going to get their money back, because all they're going to do is go out and just raid it away from all the savers who have spent a lifetime building up their accounts, building up their wealth and stuff for retirement, all those sorts of their 401k programs, etc.
They'll all go.
They're simply going to go out and take it, and you know what? They will end up with all the resources. They will end up with a reset economy that they can go merrily on their way with their green economy, and the people of the world will basically be reduced to paupers, never able to recover again.
So they want to kill capitalism for you and me, but they get to keep it. They get to keep it. They get to have it. I'm talking about the elitists.
Yes.
Whatever that nebulous they are,
Yes.
they get to keep it.
Yes, the nebulous they can be found in the ranks of organizations like the Trilateral Commission, by the way. I love to name names. These are the people that have done it to us. They're not the only ones. They're not the only ones that are complicit in this or who will benefit from it. But I'll tell you, it's a doggone good start of 300 people who have executed this plan over the last 40 years to drive us into oblivion today. They have brought us to this point. And I've had people, even economists, tell me, say, you know, the world is insane. What's going on? Why is everything upside down? Nothing makes sense anymore. Our economic models aren't working anymore. You know, we used to be able to tell, you know, we'd measure this input, that thing, you know, that statistic, whatever. We could figure out what's going on. We can't, nothing's working anymore. We can't even estimate what earnings are going to be for many of these companies that we're following. And I say, look, guys, get a grip on this. There are two economic systems in the same global space at the same time that are vying in the super battle of the millennia for supremacy. You have capitalism and free enterprise on one hand, you have technocracy on the other hand, and they're going at it head to head,
Sure.
all throughout the world, and you wonder why the world seems crazy. It's not crazy. It's exactly what you'd expect to be if you understood that there's two competing economic systems fighting to the death.
Yeah. In fact, it doesn't even matter anymore. Democracy or communism, parliamentary rule as opposed to dictatorships. All of that is like it's like fluff on the side. The way you just described it, these two competing forces, that's the real ruling entities here in the world today, isn't it?
It is.
Unbelievable.
It is.
Unbelievable.
These people want all the resources for themselves. They don't. It's not that they care so much about the money per se, but they want all of the economic resources under their direct control.
Right.
And they do not want you to have it. You're selfish. You're narrow-minded. You're not educated to their way of thinking, and you're simply incapable of taking good care of any resource that the earth has to offer.
Certainly.
That's just the way they feel about you.
Well, listen,
You know,
there's a fly in the ointment on all of this. I'm listening to what you're saying. It flabbergasts me, but I'm thinking there's a fly in the ointment, and it's called ISIS. It's called Iran getting the bomb. Now, these technocrats, these global elitists, these Agenda 21 people, they can, let's play devil's advocate. Let's say they win the day, and they transform the entire world. Iran gets the bomb, starts lobbing nuclear weapons at various countries. ISIS takes over Iraq and Syria, starts invading Jordan, Turkey. This is the fly in the ointment, isn't it? What's it going to do for the technocrats? Are they prepared to deal with this?
I don't believe it's a fly in the ointment, because we have seen these technocrats being in bed with radical Islam for decades. I can't explain it all. I'm not an expert on, everything that's been going on in the Mideast, but I'm watching it from the perspective of members of the Trilateral Commission. What I see today is a historical connection between the global elite and the Muslim Brotherhood. Mm-hmm. This goes back probably 40, 50 years at the very least. And today, you have Muslim representatives or former representatives, supposedly, of the Muslim Brotherhood in our government, high levels of government in Washington, D.C. They're not just there because they randomly applied for a job. They were invited in by the president on down to be a part of the government to do what they're doing in America today. There's a huge influence. Saudi Arabia just announced that it's going to spend another $30 billion to promote the acceptance of Sharia law in America. $30 billion. That's nothing to them. They got all the oil, but they want to convert America into a Sharia law state. Now, whether they were successful is immaterial, but in the meantime, how these people appear to be used is to be disruptors for people who might otherwise see what's really going on. There's a perpetual war, if you will, that's necessary to keep the people's mind diverted, keep them fearful of some enemy other than themselves as being the enemy. And ISIS is a wonderfully convenient enemy. What was Benghazi all about? He said, people ask about they don't understand what happened in Benghazi. We know now what happened. The embassy in Benghazi was conducting a gun-running operation to transfer weaponry from Egypt into Syria to go straight into the radical hands, into Al-Qaeda's hands, and into ISIS hands. That's where those arms were going. Our government has been supporting these organizations, not fighting them. They occasionally drop a bomb and they kill a few, but by and large, ISIS would not exist were it not for the help they got from the American government. This is crazy. See, this is not the fly in the ointment necessarily. They're using these people, and you might say, well, that's unfair to those people to be used. Well, hey, they're using us too, okay, so get used to it. But these people may be useful idiots, if you will.
Yes, good point.
But they're proving to be a very important function in keeping the people in our country in a state of fear to where we'll never see the real enemy.
That's unbelievable.
And believe me, the real enemy is not ISIS, folks. ISIS is not the sweat here, even though they're physically a threat in one sense.
Sure.
But the people that are driving this whole thing are cold-hearted, cold-blooded. I don't know what the right word to use is.
They're technocrats. It's the technocrats.
The technocrats.
That's it.
That's right.
Patrick, absolutely fantastic. I thank you so much for taking the time out on your vacation to come on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Wood, the book is Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation. It's on Amazon. I'll put all the posts and links up. You can get hold of Patrick. You can go to technocracyrising.com. Patrick, this is how I got hold of Patrick. I just went on his site, introduced myself. The rest is history. What's next for you? You writing another book? This isn't your last hurrah, is it? Come on, what's going on next?
No, I don't think it's going to be my last hurrah. I am looking at doing a lot more mainstream radio work this fall.
Good for you.
And the message needs to get out, and I've got a plan to reach a lot of other local stations and stuff around the country.
Good.
And I'm going to spend quite a bit of time doing that. But yes, I have a couple of other book ideas. I won't tell you right now what they are. They're related.
Understandable.
But until people absorb what I've already put out, it's really kind of pointless to write anymore. I hate to say it.
Well, it's true. I read the book, and it's not a tough read. Once you start reading it, you do. I euphemistically use the term. It's like after I got through the first couple of chapters and was finished throwing up, not because it's a bad book. No, it was like, oh my God, listen to what this guy's writing about. It's and then I did. I just had to dive into the book, and I blew right through it. The copy I have, sir, is dog-eared. I bent that pages back. I've highlighted passages. It's become almost like a Bible to me whenever I hear things going on about international economics, international policy, and again, this Agenda 21 stuff. I grabbed your book and I was like, wait, where's that section that I read there? So I go through it. Patrick, thank you again, and good luck with the radio stuff. Let us know later on in the fall what you're doing, and I'd love to see you again. You have an open invitation as always, sir. Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for your concern and effort.
I appreciate your time. Enjoy your vacation, sir.
Thank you.
See you later.